From the News Channel 5 Network, this is Inside Politics.
Hello, everyone. I'm News Channel 5's political analyst, Pat Nolan. Welcome to Inside Politics. Our guest today on Inside Politics is Nashville Congressman Jim Cooper. He represents the 5th District here in Tennessee, and he is a Democrat. Congressman, we always appreciate you taking time, particularly during the congressional recesses, to join us on the show. So thanks and welcome back.
Thank you, Pat. I'm always delighted to be with you.
Now, I may be mistaken about this, but it seems like every time you come on, we start talking about the fact that Congress is gridlocked. They're not getting much done. It seems the Congress has passed a few more appropriations bills this year, but not an overall budget. And on a lot of the other issues out there, no moves at all. In fact, you seem to be more gridlocked and more partisanly divided than ever before.
What's very sad, Pat, as you know, the Republicans are in charge not only of the White House, but the House and the Senate. And yet, even though the same party controls both bodies, they're still not getting much done. By the House calculation, the Senate is 400 or 500 bills behind in passing anything. So part of our problem is just the antique rules of the Senate. They're unable to get anything done because one senator can gum up the works. Sometimes that's a Republican senator, sometimes it's a Democratic senator.
So what happens the rest of the year? You're going to go back after the Labor Day recess. You'll probably be there for that month. Probably the month of October you'll be gone. That almost means there'll have to be some kind of rump session after November elections.
Well, you're right, Pat. Congress in general has been pretty lazy, but it's particularly lazy in an election year. So between now and early November, we'll probably only meet for 1 month. So there will probably be a so-called lame duck session after that. The
critical thing in terms of funding is going to be, once again, September 30th, the end of the federal fiscal year. Congress, again, will probably be in the 11th hour trying to figure out what to do about a stopgap measure to keep the government going forward. President Trump has raised the specter of another government shutdown. What do you think? Is that likely?
Well, the president hasn't just raised the specter, he's almost volunteered to have one, which is absolutely crazy. Nobody should want a government shutdown because there are essential services that have to be preserved. No ongoing enterprise ever wants to shut itself down. With one-party control, the bottom line is they've been unable to govern, even though they control all the levers of power.
In his tweets, the president also often offers advice to Congress. Privately, what do you hear from both your Democratic and Republican colleagues about what they think about this president and his effectiveness on the Hill?
Well, Pat, you've asked a very sensitive question here because literally all my colleagues, Republican and Democrat, House and Senate, who've met personally with the president, do not come away with a very favorable opinion. For example, Republican U.S. Senator from Nebraska, Ben Sass, he actually uses the word insane. There are others who are equally critical, usually privately, not so much publicly. Our own Bob Corker has had some scathing comments, generally more subtle, like when he called the White House an adult daycare center undergoing a shift change, things like that. It's really scary when the president not only tweets wild things in the morning, then changes his mind by noon, and then does something completely reversed again. 2 weeks ago, we had the specter of all 5 of our intelligence agency heads openly contradicting the president, and then the president re-contradicting them by the afternoon.
The president has now stripped the security clearance for John Brennan, the former head of the CIA. There's a list of others he may do that as well, people who've been critical of him, in some cases very sharply critical, even using the word treason. Has the president crossed the line with this?
The head of the CIA is a very important position. I think the president looks small and petty when he takes revenge against John Brennan, because we have freedom of speech in this country. If you're a retired official, you know, you should be able to speak your mind.
But he more or less accused the president of treason. That's pretty strong stuff.
Well, the president has acted in a very strange and curious way. Now, until the Bob Mueller investigation is completed, we won't know the facts, and I want to withhold judgment until then. But the president has sent out a lot of self-incriminating tweets. These are tweets he has sent out himself. He has insisted on using that as a medium. And I don't know a single Republican in America or in Tennessee who thinks the president should keep on tweeting like this.
If the things that you hear privately from members of Congress, both in the House and the Senate, why don't they speak out collectively about that? They come out individually, and everybody knows the first one over the wall on something like this is generally going to get shot or wounded politically. Are they all scared they can't take him on?
Well, I wish they would hold hands and have a joint press conference and just say what they all feel privately, because they do need to speak out. I think as elected representatives, they have an obligation to tell their constituents back home the truth, and the truth is very disturbing right now.
Well, is it serious enough that you join your Tennessee colleague Steve Cohen from down in Memphis and join him and move towards the impeachment of this president? You've moved away from that before now.
I think we should be slow in coming to judgment. We should count to 10. We need the facts from the Mueller investigation first. We should be only motivated by facts, not by rumor or innuendo. But the president has done some very strange things. For example, meeting alone in the Oval Office with the Russians right after he got inaugurated. As I mentioned earlier, contradicting the heads of our top 5 intelligence agencies, people he appointed. This is very erratic behavior. The tariff war is another thing that violates all Republican principles. He's hurting the economy. Now, the tax cuts help the economy. But that's not an impeachable offense. Oh, it's not. But these are very strange ways to act if you're the president. He has badmouthed so much of America. This is really, it's not a good way for a president to heal the nation.
Talk about one policy issue with you. You're in favor of the creation of a Space Corp. So is the president. Are you two in favor of the same thing?
The president took our idea from 2 years ago that was completely bipartisan to strengthen our space capabilities because we are so dependent on our satellites. The president took that idea and ran with it and really went too far with it. He wants to make a separate military service. Our idea had been to strengthen space within the Air Force. The president is making an attack on the Air Force and trying to pull space assets out of the Air Force entirely. That really goes too far. His rhetoric is hyperbole. It's really, it's going too far.
So people understand this is not exploration of space. This is about militarizing and in a lot of cases weaponizing space.
Well, for decades we've had superb military satellites on which we all depend. We also have this GPS system for which we get our directions on our iPhones and, you know, getting around town. No ATM would work. You know, our email wouldn't work.
And we're vulnerable on that.
We are completely vulnerable because our satellites are largely defenseless. And way back in 2007, the Chinese exploded one of their own weather satellites. So they have the capability, other nations do too, to take out our satellites. We need to be able to defend our satellite assets in space, and the Air Force has not moved fast enough to do that.
Even your original bill was struggling to get enough support in Congress to pass. Is it now in even worse shape because it's become a little more partisan, perhaps?
Well, no. We actually got it passed in the last 2 military laws, the NDAAs, the National Defense Authorization Acts. We didn't get quite a strong a version as we would have liked because we had a little bit of Senate opposition and some Air Force resistance. Now that the president has politicized the issue and polarized the issue and even commercialized the issue, because the RNC, the Republican Campaign Committee, was trying to sell patches and make money off of this idea, that's just crazy, because we're not talking Star Trek here. We're talking about defending U.S. military assets in space and doing that in a respectable way.
Congressman Jim Cooper is our guest. We're discussing issues in Washington, and in the next part of Inside Politics, we'll talk about the elections coming up in November. Stay with us.